you, Sarah. Heather's actually joining us but not speaking, so I have left her name on the slide. So if you have any questions, please do write them in, and you might get instantaneous answers because I know she's actually in the audience today. So I'm literally the voice of this rather than I'm a little bit, I've been contributing to it, but Heather is the main sort of instigator behind what I'm talking about. So I'm going to be talking about SLOs, I'm going to be talking about remote sensing, I'm going to be talking about visualization tools. I'm going to be talking about the co-creation that happens when geoscience meets social science, and how social scientists such as myself are continuing to try and translate what we do so that it becomes understandable and not thought of as social babble, which is what my father, who's a geophysicist, calls what I do to this day. So to begin with, I'm representing Sazani Associates. Who are we? What do we do? We're a small name. We like to think we punch above our weight. We've been working in the natural resources sector for about sort of, I suppose, 10 years in a small way, sort of various different energy, oil and gas. Our roots are in sustainable livelihoods and climate change adaptation. We are community development practitioners at heart. We look at natural resources, natural resource governance, natural resource management. But we've been adapting our skills for the last 10 years or so, more and more towards supporting projects, technical support, research and innovation, training, which we've sort of now deliver training for geoscientists, where we used to do training for teachers and community development practitioners. And also sort of ESG risk reviews, just sort of doing due diligences and things. So we're an example of a not-for-profit organisation that has adapted really in terms of the climate and what's available, but also the industry and its realisation that they actually can learn from sort of the social and the international development sector, which is where we initially had our home. This project, which I'm talking to you about today, I'm just using the word of Sarah's conference this year. I think co-creation is the word of the week. And this project is co-creation in action. I'm going to be talking about two tools that have been developed by two different sets of research funding and how they've been melded or are being melded together and where we see this going. And I will come back to this slide at the end. Social license to operate. It's a thing, isn't it a thing? It's still incredibly contentious. People still say, we don't like it, we don't see its value. But at the end of the day, communities very rarely have formal ways of gaining or requiring consent. And it is the informal processes that continue sort of to be there. And it is the failure of engaging in informal processes that result in conflict. I call this social license. I think it's as political as it is anything else. One thing that has been shown by a lot of the research in Europe that I've been involved in through Horizon 2020, along with research in sort of numerous countries across Latin America and Africa, have shown that existing land use is what drives conflict more and more. And also the lack of understanding the social context. Sarah's spoken a lot about context this week as well. And again, it is about where existing land use and social context sit and how these together can support either the achievement and or the maintenance of a social license. Remote sensing, this is an interesting thing. Land use, remote sensing is used more and more and more in land use. And I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone here because I like using the products of this work, but I don't ever get to do it. And I never have actually done it. So this now I'm dipping very much into Heather's sort of world. But you know what remote sensing does, it can be used for determining what is there. It can be used for modelling land use change. And here you have examples of where it's being used. In this picture on the left is some actually research we did in Zanzibar in East Africa sort of a few years ago, where we looked at sort of land use change in terms of mangroves and how this affected climate change and climate change adaptation. We mapped over a period of 20 years the degradation of the mangroves there. You've got other examples here that if you want to know what they ask Heather. Sorry, Heather. And then we have this lovely tool which we've been developing, and it's been developed in a partnership with Aberystwyth University, with Geome, which is an innovation sort of fund that's also sort of Welsh, and also sort of quite an interesting partner who tend to focus more on defence work, but have involved in a research partnership with Aberystwyth, and we actually got involved in it as well and received support. And this came from us as practitioners having an ongoing relationship with one of our local academic institutions, and them approaching us and saying, we've got this funding, we need an industry partner, we don't know what to do, what can we do, what should we do? And we said, well, we really see land use change as the issue, and we would like to map it. We'd like to map the change. We'd like to understand and be able to demonstrate this change sort of to the sector so they can see what's happened and why they need to prioritise these issues. And I went, okay, well, tell us more. And we sat down, we talked, we planned. They brought in their remote sensing specialists. We talked, we planned some more. And then Heather got involved, and we came up with an amazing tool, which I think the products are fantastic. How it works, again, Heather's in the audience, ask her. We call it our Environmental Ecosystems and Evaluation Mapping Tool, and we use it to map change. We use it to map land change. We're working with a gold exploration project in Ethiopia at the moment, Akobo Gold, who are focusing on small-scale mining and also trying to sort of just rethink how gold mining can work. Gold mining is important in Ethiopia because it's a country with very little access to foreign capital, sort of to US dollars. This is an area which is predominantly used by artisanal mining and has been for a long time. This exploration project's also been there for a very long time, and they're looking at how they can actually have a collaborative project, how we can look and combine environmental rehabilitation and conservation of ecosystem services and maintenance of ecosystem services alongside a small-scale sort of gold sort of exploitation project. So to do this, we've actually been mapping land change. And this is the land change within the concession area over the last 10 years. And what we're looking at, what we're able to show is the change in land use. We're able to show where the artisanal mining is, where it moves, how it's moved. We're able to look at the water, where there has been water, being able to show that this area actually doesn't suffer from drought. Water is there and rainfall has been pretty much continuous over the last sort of 10 years or so. And its information is of use to us in terms of understanding existing land use and historical land use. So being able to use that to project in terms of looking at sort of how to engage with the communities, with the artisanal miners. It's also of use to the project as well, in terms of looking at how they can sort of identify and use it in terms of exploration. Another tool that we've been involved in developing is our Social Licensed Operator Index. This started with SLK when I worked there as one of their global social lead. It then moved to InFact, which was a Horizon 2020 project, through which we were able sort of to adapt it for a European context. And we got as far as looking at how, as well as understanding land use change, how human terrain can be mapped. And we got it to a level where it's a tool that's ready to be taken online, and it again shows the potential of social license and the potential of achieving it, but also the potential of maintaining it moving forwards. And it focused heavily on this whole notion of context, again the word that's been coming through this week. And we look at context through what people have. Not what they need, not what's there, but what people have. And we use something called the Sustainable Livelihoods Framework to understand the different assets that people have or have access to, then to understand how this can then be translated into potential risk, how this combines with regional development, how it combines with the practice of the company in terms of their relationships, and how it combines with governance. And by governance, we mean project governance, we mean corporate governance, and we mean the governance of the country as well. So looking at governance from every different perspective, and then all the relationships between those. So our co-creation is looking at, oh sorry, just this slide quickly. In terms of the social license to operate index, one thing we were trying to do, again, was translate social science so it's an understandable concept, and social license so it's an understandable context for engineers and geologists. And I know I've got a lot of you behind my screen right now, and I'm sure you will all agree, and it's been said to me, and we've actually verified it with a survey with more than 1,200 sort of geoscientists for the INFAT project, that geologists like colours, engineers like numbers, social scientists like complex, qualitative situations. How can we bring the three together? And this is what we've attempted to do through this index. We bring the complexity of contextual difference, of relationships, of governance structures. We bring all of that complexity together, and we demonstrate it through numbers and colours, and we have resulted in an index which currently looks like this. But then we got thinking, what are the opportunities for taking it one step further? We have this land use tool. We are mapping land use change. We have that capability. We also have the capability to map the human terrain and to map the potential for change that feeds social license to operate. How could we bring them together? How could we visualize this? And we were lucky to be able to secure some funding from the UK Innovation Fund to try and build and extend this concept further. And what would it look like? So here are some prototypes of some of our thinking. Again, how can we bring colour in? How can we visualise risk? A lot of work has been done, and I think there's some talks tomorrow about it, but a lot of work has been done in terms of how you can use GIS and remote sensing and modelling. And I think most of you will be familiar with things like Leapfrog, which enabled sort of 3D sort of visualization of what goes on underneath the ground. But what about a 3D visualization of what happens above ground that could be used to speak to the communities, could be used to speak to the mining companies, could be used to speak to the exploration, could be used to speak to all stakeholders, could be used to speak to regulatory bodies, to understand and actually demonstrate actually what the potential risks are in a 3D visual way. And I think one thing we've learned more and more, especially this year, we can't travel to places. It's difficult. And so we're drawing more and more on these sort of innovative sort of remote sensing technologies that use sort of lots of sort of algorithms and other sort of creative and sort of quite funky stuff to make a visual representation of the risks, whether they be environmental, social, governance, and technical, and how these sit together. And this is what we're trying to do. So we've got it as far as concept stage at the moment. We are talking to some pretty big hitters, which scares me, quite frankly, in the world in terms of where we go next. We're also talking to some less scary bodies like EIT Raw Materials, who Nick mentioned, to look at how we can sort of get some startup funding sort of to take this forward as well. But we'd be really interested in hearing what people sort of in the audience today think. Do you think something like this would be useful to your project? What do you think would make a tool like this incredibly valuable for you? Are you already using something similar? Have you missed a trick somewhere? Is there someone else doing something? Because from what the conversations we're having, we're in quite a sort of quiet space. If there are people doing things similar, do you want to have a conversation? We would love to, because we have the ideas. But we realise that we can take it so far, and we would love to take it further. But we'd love to be part of an even bigger co-creation and collaboration to do that. And so that is my presentation. It was supposed to have been a lot more technical. I have sped through the technical bits because it's not my forte, and you don't want me sort of getting tongue-tied over things that I don't really understand. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much. I've been Cathryn MacCallum for Heather De-Quincey, and this is Heather's email, and I can answer questions that are socially orientated, and Heather can answer questions in the chat for the ones that aren't. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cathryn and Heather, for that fantastic talk. So a round of applause from all of us on the other side of our microphones and computers. So I think, I mean, with regards to this, if you do have questions or if you'd like to get in touch with Heather or Cathryn, I know that Heather can't talk at the moment, so I'm actually going to leave the questions in the written space. I was going to say virtual space, but this is all virtual, in the written space for the moment. But also as well, Cathryn, you asked for any insight as to whether we've seen other things happening. So I posted it towards the beginning of your talk. Last year we had a talk from Gareth Morgan from Terabotics. They've been doing a lot of this for quite a long time. So I know that if Heather and Gareth haven't actually managed to speak yet, they really, 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 really need to speak, because there's some fantastic work that's been going on for ages now in terms of computer vision, but then also in the GIS space into the remote sensing that I'm sure Heather is very well aware of.
Yeah, as I say, we've taken this to a level, and so we're having some conversations with some pretty big hitters at the moment as to how it could be taken into a more of a commercial realm. As I say, we are practitioners at heart, but we are very interested in how this space can sort of be taken, and also I think really for the juniors and definitely for the juniors, somehow for the mid-tiers as well, but for the junior and the mid-tier organizations that are looking sort of to understand but do not have the resources that sort of some of the bigger companies do. I think it's a good conversation.
There's so much potential with this technology, which is brilliant. And I think the more fantastic minds that are piling into this space, absolutely better, because what we've got is we've got loads of satellites and loads of different types of sensors that are up there. And the problem is nobody knows what to do with the data. So we've got loads of data collection mechanisms and actually a dearth of people who can use those data sets, and exactly as you say, Cathryn, actually interpret them and know what they mean. So absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Cathryn and Heather. Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Heather and Cathryn. Brilliant.
Thank you.